To ensure nothing went wrong, he turned his gaze to Iceheart Great Venerable beside him and said with earnest sincerity, "Senior, this junior would like to ask for your help." Then he laid out his plan in detail. Upon hearing this, Iceheart Great Venerable showed a moment of realization and said softly, "So it's the treasure of the Oblivion Hermit." Although I'm not too familiar with his character, a Great Venerable who has entered the 5 declines of Heavenly Man would never stoop to using his supreme Raid Spirit artifact Oh Harma Jr., perhaps the void connected to this Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron truly hides some unknown secrets. At this point, she changed her tone, a look of worry creeping across her brow. But that void space is so perilous. If you were swept deep by the chaotic currents, I'm afraid even I might not be able to bring you back safely. She thought Fang Chen's plan to enter the void was truly too risky. Fang Chen, unruffled, took out a pair of jade rings, one large, one small, both glowing with purple light. He handed the smaller ring to Iceheart Great Venerable, explaining, "This is a rare pair of spirit jade rings. Once we each wear one, the distance between us can never exceed 1,000 zhang. That way, even if I enter the void, it will be like dropping an anchor. I won't have to worry about being completely swept away." Iceheart Great Venerable lowered her eyes, staring at the ring extended to her, hesitating a moment before slowly reaching out to take it. She glanced at Fang Chen, then down at the ring in her hand, her red lips pressing slightly together before she nodded and said, "All right." As she spoke, she gently slipped the ring onto her wrist. In an instant, it transformed into a soft purple halo and silently melded into her fair skin. Gratitude shone on Fang Chen's face as he swiftly put the larger ring on his own wrist. Everything was ready. Once Iceheart Great Venerable retreated 1,000 zhang, she could forcibly pull him back from the void's devouring grasp. Fang Chen took a deep breath, once again gathering his soul force to slowly shift the heavy cauldron aside. In a split second, a tremendous suction force erupted from the cauldron's mouth, accompanied by a piercing shriek, instantly sweeping Fang Chen inside. Just as he was about to fly uncontrollably into the boundless depths of the void, when the distance precisely stretched to 1,000 zhang, his figure suddenly froze in midair. Arly, the heart resonance bracelet had worked its magic. Fang Chen looked up, and what he saw was a pitch black, deathly silent void world, stretching without end as if a blind man had fallen into eternal darkness. However, suspended above his head was a bright, pure moon. That was the bottom of the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron. Brilliant light from the Middle Earth world streamed through the bottom, opening into the void, forming a radiant, dazzling full moon. After confirming his safety, Fang Chen finally began to look around. Upon careful inspection, he indeed noticed something unusual about the area beneath the cauldron. Around the bright full moon, 9 majestic dragon-shaped phantoms swam, each faintly containing threads of law fluctuations. Yes, it was the unique, terrifying fluctuation of sage laws. The origins of this Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron were even more astonishing than he had initially imagined. After pondering a moment, Fang Chen willed his soul force to tentatively touch the 9 swimming dragon phantoms. Instantly, a chill, bone-piercing stream of information rushed back along the soul force and directly flooded into his mind. Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron, Quay's I-World artifact, ignores the world laws of Middle Earth to forcibly upgrade the grade of spirit pills and can additionally refine an extra one. However, each use will weaken the law force within the 9 dragon phantoms by 1/10. Once the law force of the 9 dragons is completely exhausted, if one wishes to use this divine ability again, the alchemist must pay the corresponding price. Use with caution. When Fang Chen first received the information, he didn't immediately grasp its deeper meaning, but after pondering it for a while, his pupils suddenly contracted sharply, and incredulous, piercing light bursting from his eyes. Does this imply that my current skill can only refine 5th-grade spirit pills, yet under the influence of the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron's law, I could defy the heavens and refine a 6th-grade pill, and normally, one batch of materials yields only 1 pill, but because of the Cauldron's law, I could actually produce a 2nd pill out of thin air. This is just too heaven-defying. No wonder it's called a Quay's I-World artifact. It has completely transcended ordinary spirit artifacts, yet remains a level below the legendary world artifact. At the same time, Fang Chen suddenly realized why the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron connected to this void. Because only by conducting the refining process in a void outside Middle-earth could it completely avoid the suppression of Middle-earth's laws, thereby defying fate to upgrade the pill's grade and miraculously produce an extra spirit pill. It was a pity that the law force within the 9 dragon phantoms was already extremely faint, at most only able to support one more heaven-defying use. After that, he would have to pay the price himself. And the consequences would likely be no different from using the wishing paper. Understanding all this, Fang Chen tried calling out to Iceheart Great Venerable to pull him up, but the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron instead extended a gentle guiding force, steadily bringing him back. So Fang Chen's worry had been unnecessary. Even if one was accidentally swept into the void, the cauldron would eventually safely return them to Middle-earth, provided the cauldron's lid remained open. If Iceheart Great Venerable had accidentally closed the lid at this moment, he would truly be stuck here forever. With the hidden danger of the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron resolved, a heavy weight was lifted from Fang Chen's heart. He relaxed and let the cauldron's power guide him back to Middle-earth. But just as he was about to reach the cauldron's bottom, out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly glimpsed a large expanse of ruins drifting past from the depths of the void. It was shattered earth and broken corpses of hellish creatures, debris from the interlayer world. Abruptly, Fang Chen's gaze froze. He spotted something extremely familiar within the swiftly passing ruins. It was a block of hard ice, emitting cold air, with a heart-shaped bronze lock frozen inside. Earlier, to banish the calamity, releasing Black Lotus into the void, he had directly crushed the Soul Shadow Demon Lord's spatial storage device. Unfortunately, the fortune transferring lock he had given to the Demon Lord as a backup was also inside that storage device at the time, so it was banished into the void along with the Black Lotus. He hadn't expected it to still be drifting nearby. Fang Chen wanted to retrieve it with his void fishing rod, but unfortunately, he was already being pulled back by the cauldron's force. Meanwhile, Iceheart Great Venerable was standing alone in the secret chamber, looking down at her own wrist, her delicate brows slightly furrowed. She murmured softly, "The heart resonance bracelet of Starry Mountain. Isn't this specifically prepared for those new couples in the sect who are about to become Dao companions? Fang Chen actually had me wear it. Does he truly not know its significance, or is he feigning ignorance?" Just as she was lost in thought, Fang Chen was safely returned by the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron. Fang Chen, however, failed to notice the fleeting odd expression on her face. Instead, he urgently said, "I must trouble Senior to keep wearing the jade ring a little longer. This junior needs to go down once more." "Wait," Iceheart Great Venerable frowned lightly and said resolutely, "Find someone else to wear that ring." She felt that this was growing more and more inappropriate. If outsiders learned that the two of them had put on the heart resonance bracelet, they could never wash themselves clean. Continuing this ambiguous situation made her thoroughly uncomfortable. Fang Chen was secretly anxious. The fortune transferring lock was racing through the void at high speed, and in a blink it could drift countless miles away. If he missed this chance, he might not be so fortunate as to encounter it again. Regrettably, Iceheart Great Venerable adamantly refused. He had no choice but to magically retrieve the smaller jade ring from her wrist, yet still clasped his fists in deep gratitude and said, "Many thanks for Senior's care." Iceheart Great Venerable gave Fang Chen a meaningful look, her tone slightly complex as she warned, "This jade ring. In the future, don't casually let others wear it." Fang Chen was taken aback, staring blankly at the heart's resonance ring in his hand, thinking, "Is there something wrong with this jade ring?" He nodded in a daze. "Oh, all right, Senior." Seeing him like this, Iceheart Great Venerable realized that he truly did not understand the meaning of this item. The slight misgiving in her heart slowly dissipated, but a trace of wariness due to the distinction between men and women also arose. Even though in the Moon Realm they were close friends who could talk about anything, in reality they were still a young man and woman, and it was best to maintain some distance. "I will guard you outside the cultivation chamber. If there's any trouble, you can call for me." Iceheart Great Venerable said softly, then gracefully turned and left the cultivation chamber. It was Iceheart Great Venerable who had insisted on following in, and now it was also Iceheart Great Venerable who was anxious to leave. Fang Chen was somewhat baffled, but felt it was fine this way. Looking at the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron before him, he shook his head helplessly and put it away. After all this chaos, the transference lock had probably long vanished without a trace. He sat cross-legged, first taking out the two spirit swords, Purple Lightning and Azure Frost, then the Earthen Fang sword, whose true name he had only recently learned, and adding the Listening Snow sword. Now he possessed 4 peak-grade spirit swords. As long as he could gather 2 more, he would complete the set of 6 swords, then the Grand Derivation Sword array could reach its grand completion state. Slaying experts at the first decline of heaven, man would be as easy as turning over his hand, and even killing existences at the second decline of heaven, man would be no issue at LL. Next, he carefully inspected the venom left by the Black Dragon, Great Venerable, and that set of Black Dragon battle armor, making sure no new abnormal auras had emerged. Afterward, he began counting his spoils of war, disdainfully tossing the 9 fowls, melling boots into a corner, but staring at the section of divine wood in deep thought. The Black Dragon, Great Venerable, had spent his entire life's effort cultivating the divine wood, and in the end, it had only barely managed to grow a single purple bud. For him to be so persistent, it was evident that this divine wood must have a great origin. In that case, could he use the resting earth to try cultivating this divine wood? At the thought, he immediately took out the small pouch containing the resting earth. Speaking of which, there was another thing being cultivated in the resting earth, the strange seed that could freeze a person's form and then devour their blood essence. As early as his first entry into the heavenly realm, he had planted it in the resting earth to cultivate, and had paid no attention to it since. Such a long time had passed in a flash, even a random weed by the roadside should have cultivated into a spirit by now in this resting earth, right? This resting earth had the heaven-defying ability to make a plant grow into a centuries-old tree within a month. That freeze seed had been cultivated for no less than 2 months. No matter what, there should have been some astonishing changes, right? However, when Fang Chen opened the small pouch and looked, his nose nearly bent out of shape in anger. This seed looked exactly the same as when he had planted it. It was still just a seed, having merely sprouted a thin, weak little bean sprout, and at the tip of the sprout was a wrinkled bud. Little useless thing wasted so much of my resting earth for nothing. Fang Chen cursed, and with 2 fingers pinched together, was about to yank out this useless thing and throw it away. Who knew just at the instant his fingers were about to touch the seed, that bud suddenly opened a mouth and fiercely bit at his fingers. Fortunately, Fang Chen had always kept a sliver of precaution. At the critical moment, he pulled his hand back in time. A teeth-grinding crunch sound of breaking echoed. The space beside the bud was actually bitten into collapse, almost revealing a dark void. That ear-splitting snapping sound made Fang Chen's ears ring and his mind roar. He was completely stunned, staring at the seed with shock. Only then did he notice that, although the seed's exterior hadn't changed much, the inside of the opened bud was lined with a terrifying array of interlocking golden teeth, and Ri was a vine, resembling a tongue darting in and out. This, Fang Chen was speechless for a long moment. Only one thought remained in his mind. What exactly had he cultivated? Judging from the biting force just now, even a deity transformation venerable at the first decline of heaven, man would probably have his finger bitten off by that bite, right? What surprised Fang Chen even more was that the bud on the seed was constantly growing larger. In just a moment, it swelled to the size of a house and babbled something unintelligible at Fang Chen. Although he couldn't understand it, it wasn't hard to guess that it was anything but good. It was probably warning Fang Chen not to dare pull it out of the resting earth. The veins on Fang Chen's forehead throbbed violently. He gritted his teeth inwardly. Was this rebel number 2? This thing actually dared to bite even its owner. But then again, since this thing could become house-sized, wouldn't it be perfect for biting off the head of the giant king in one go? If used in the ancient giant war, it would be just the thing. Thinking of this, Fang Chen snorted coldly and barked, "You behave yourself. If you dare bare your teeth again, believe it or not, I'll burn you to a crisp with one fire." Before his words even finished, a scorching source of fire essence surged forth in his palm. Only then did the freeze seed retract its imposing manner, flicked its vine, and obediently shrank back down. Fang Chen gave it an exasperated glare, casually stuck the divine wood into the resting earth, and then put away the pouch. He let out a slight breath of turbid air and calculated in his heart, this time out, the gains were truly enormous. Aside from obtaining various magic treasures, I also successfully locked onto the suspect for the Asura Holy Sun. Additionally, I persuaded Gong Kei to return to my side, and the greatest regret in my heart has finally been fulfilled. The dangers to Lingshu and Lialai have also been resolved. The only worry is Yu Mingzhu. As soon as he thought of that bright and beautiful girl with a bizarre mind that he couldn't figure out, Fang Chen's heart sank heavily again. I wonder if old Wang King actually found her. Is she still alive now? 3 days passed in a flash. Above Spirit Snake Mountain, 3 enormous phantom images successively appeared. One of them was a lifelike soaring serpent, radiating an extremely ancient and noble aura, and carrying a supreme majesty that intimidated all demons. The demon clan members on Spirit Snake Mountain all revealed themselves, their faces showing a reverence that originated from deep within their bloodlines. The Myriad-Jun Demon Lord was so excited that his whole body trembled, and he said with a quivering voice, Atavism. The Golden Scale Great Venerable has also achieved Atavism. Outsiders would find it very difficult to understand his excitement at this moment. As a subordinate of the Golden Scale Great Venerable, he had always followed the other unwaveringly, but the other demon lords were not like this. As the Black Dragon Great Venerable achieved Atavism early and his strength grew day by day, they either joined the Black Dragon Great Venerable's banner or had long been wavering in their hearts. Watching one familiar old friend after another stand on the opposing side, he felt both grief and indignation and deep helplessness. Now it was good. The Golden Scale Great Venerable had also achieved Atavism, and that aura seemed even stronger than that of the Black Dragon Great Venerable by a notch. Spirit Snake Mountain would thus end its long, standing standoff situation and re-establish a new order with the Golden Scale Great Venerable at its core. We respectfully congratulate the Golden Scale Great Venerable on his Atavism. The demons all bowed in unison. The Golden Scale Great Venerable appeared in the sky with Liulai and Lingshu, his brows showing unrestrained excitement, and declared loudly, everyone, no need for excessive courtesy. As he spoke, he immediately looked toward Fang Chen's cave abode and said loudly, Fang Chen, I will personally escort you to the Imperial Astronomy Bureau. This act of his was not only to express his grand gratitude to Fang Chen, but also hid a deeper meaning, to use this to compete with the Black Dragon Great Venerable. Fang Chen, who had been cultivating in seclusion for a few days, had his cultivation become a bit more complete and harmonious. He walked out of the cultivation chamber slowly, cupped his hands toward the Golden Scale Great Venerable, and said with a smile, Congratulations. Afterward, Fang Chen came before Lingshu, handed a spatial storage device to her, and admonished, Inside is black profound ice. Don't be impatient, absorb it slowly. I look forward to your success in cultivation. Lingshu took the storage device and gently nestled into his arms. She knew that the time for parting had come, and her eyes couldn't help but fill with mist of reluctance. She said softly, Once I finish my cultivation, I'll immediately come back to find you. Fang Chen chuckled softly, stroked her smooth long hair, and said gently, I'll wait for you. But deep in his heart, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He truly did not know if he would live to see the day Lingshu returned. This parting might well be eternal. Liulai's eyes also reddened as she stared at Fang Chen. Fang Chen, I forbid you to die at the hands of the ancient giants. Do you hear me? Fang Chen turned to look at her and replied with a smile, All right, little Princess Liulai. This former daughter of the Demon Emperor, the unmarried princess, had finally found her father and a good home. He could now set his mind at ease. Fang Chen bent down and kissed Lingshu's forehead, then gently let her go and said, Take care. With that, he leaped into the air and arrived beside the Golden Scale Venerable. Before departing, the Golden Scale Venerable cupped his fists toward the Ice Heart Venerable and said, Ice Heart Venerable, I ask you to wait for me half a day. Once I have seen Fang Chen off and returned, I will properly express my gratitude. This time not only have I troubled the Ice Heart Venerable to help us ward off the hell creatures, but also asked you to look after Fang Chen, delaying you for over half a month. I am truly ashamed. The Ice-Heart Venerable slowly rose, casually brushing creases from the hem of her dress, and said calmly, Fellow Taoist Golden Scale, there is no need for such formality. I ventured out this time precisely to establish merit and virtue. The Myriad Demon Great State is in crisis, making it the right time for me to do so. We each gain what we seek. As she spoke, she raised her head to gaze at the horizon, a hint of helplessness on her face, and sighed softly, Unfortunately, after all this frantic effort, I have not earned a shred of merit. The hell creatures came in overwhelming force, and she could not completely resolve the threat, nor did she gain the faith of the demon race. Thus merit naturally remained out of reach. When her peripheral gaze fell upon Fang Chen, her heart grew even more helpless. Those who desire merit gain nothing, while one who cannot even receive merit has achieved towering contributions. Ah, perhaps this is fate. If Fang Chen were at the 5 declines of heaven and man realm, the great deeds he accomplished this time would certainly earn him merit. Alas, he is still only at the nascent soul stage. Oh, a look of surprise appeared in Fang Chen's eyes. So this Ice-Heart Venerable was also seeking merit. He suddenly recalled that the Wutong Venerable's merit had not yet found a suitable inheritor, and he secretly pondered. In terms of character, the Ice-Heart Venerable was pure and upright, truly worthy of being entrusted with that merit. However, he still knew too little about her. He needed a deeper, more thorough understanding of her. Why not invite her to visit the Take in Great State? But a figure of her caliber would probably be very difficult to persuade, right? With an attitude of giving it a try, Fang Chen spoke his invitation. Senior Iceheart, if you have the leisure, why not accompany me to the take in great state? This junior has some matters he wishes to consult you on in person. The Iceheart Venerable was slightly taken aback. This fellow actually invited me to visit the take in great state. She immediately recalled the incident with the mutual understanding rings and, without hesitation, refused. I appreciate the kind gesture, but I have other important matters to attend to, so it is inconvenient for me to go. Fang Chen shrugged helplessly. Fine, I originally intended to assess you and entrust the merit to you, but if you're unwilling to be assessed, then so be it. For some reason, the golden scale venerable beside them felt inexplicably a bit more at ease. He secretly thought that Fang Chen had finally been rebuffed by the Iceheart Venerable. Before, the Iceheart Venerable had taken such good care of Fang Chen that he had once thought the two had quite an unusual relationship. In this way, his own daughter could be considered to have one less formidable rival. The Golden Scale Venerable immediately laughed heartily and declared loudly, Iceheart Venerable, wait a moment, I'll be back soon. As soon as the words left his mouth, he swept Fang Chen up and directly teleported away. Watching their rapidly retreating figures, the Iceheart Venerable once again sat down cross-legged. But just as she closed her eyes, she suddenly opened them wide again, a strange look of panic spreading within them. She silently groaned, oh no. She had originally planned to go to the take in great state to search for the whereabouts of the primordial ancient token. But she had just refused Fang Chen's invitation to his face. If she went now and happened to run into him, how terribly awkward would that be? She secretly regretted it, blaming herself for refusing too hastily. After pondering for a moment, she slowly regained her composure and comforted herself, it's fine. The taking great state is vast and boundless. How could I possibly run into Fang Chen so coincidentally? Besides, as long as I quietly find the person who possesses the primordial ancient token, how would Fang Chen even know I came to the take in great state? At this very moment, on the other side. The Golden Scale Venerable, escorting Fang Chen, had already moved far away from the Spirit Snake Mountain. In just a short while, only the boundless expanse of a vast, primordial forest lay behind them. With the Golden Scale Venerable's terrifying speed, he could reach the Imperial Observatory, which would have taken Fang Chen 5 or 6 days in merely half a day. And this was even with the Golden Scale Venerable deliberately restraining his movement technique somewhat, in case the Black Dragon Venerable launched a sneak attack. They were just about to leave the territory of the Spirit Snake Mountain. Suddenly, the entire sky darkened without any warning. A massive black tail, blotting out the sky and sun, crushed through layers of space, dragging countless fine void fissures in its wake. With a power that could annihilate heaven and earth, it viciously lashed toward the two. The Golden Scale Venerable, instead of anger, felt joy and let out a hearty laugh. I thought you'd hold it in until we were further away before making your move. It seems you couldn't wait a moment longer. They had just left the range of the Spirit Snake Mountain, and the moment the Iceheart Venerable's intimidating aura vanished, the Black Dragon Venerable could no longer hold back, and immediately launched a lethal strike. His fervent desire to kill Fang Chen was so intense it surpassed anyone's imagination. The Golden Scale Venerable laughed long and abruptly released Fang Chen. An ancient, colossal phantom of a soaring serpent surged from behind him as he shot into the sky. In an instant, a deafening explosion roared out like a raging tide, sweeping across all directions. That enormous black tail was brutally blasted away, and large swaths of golden blood splattered across the sky. A voice filled with shock and fury thundered from the depths of the firmament. You've also achieved ancestral return. This is impossible. The Black Dragon Venerable materialized from the void, his face etched with sheer disbelief. He had only managed to achieve ancestral return by relying on that mysterious crystal mine from beyond the heavens, gaining an unimaginable, fortuitous encounter. But what did the Golden Scale Venerable rely on? Just then, he suddenly caught sight of Fang Chen, standing unharmed to the side. Recalling that Fang Chen had obtained the opportunity to capture the myriad spirit ancestral blood, the Black Dragon Venerable was instantly both shocked and enraged, roaring furiously, Ozly, you little beast, it's you again. Without a doubt, Fang Chen must have captured the myriad spirit ancestral blood and given it to the Golden Scale Venerable. That was what caused the bloodline power within the Golden Scale Venerable to surge so dramatically. The rage burning in the Black Dragon Venerable's heart nearly blew the top of his skull off. This little brat first lost his calamity, transcending Black Lotus, then snatched his treasures, and now he's even helping his mortal enemy achieve ancestral return. You deserve to die. The Black Dragon Venerable unleashed an earth-shattering roar. The divine halo behind him vibrated madly, and a terrifying domain spread out instantaneously, blotting out the sky. Fang Chen had experienced this domain before. It was a baleful domain that could turn living beings into walking corpses. Fortunately, the Golden Scale Venerable was no longer the same as before. His whole body radiated brilliant golden light, like a blazing sun suddenly rising, completely evaporating the overwhelming domain power. The Golden Scale Venerable's voice boomed like thunder. "Black Dragon, your days of unbridled tyranny are over." With a wave of his hand, countless fine golden serpents shot out like a torrential downpour. The Black Dragon Venerable roared repeatedly and frantically counterattacked. The two Supreme Venerables, following their battle in the Interlayer world, once again fiercely clashed. Unlike the last time when the Golden Scale Venerable was constantly suppressed, this time it was clearly the Golden Scale Venerable who held the upper hand. The Black Dragon Venerable was firmly suppressed, forced into a continuous retreat. What made the Black Dragon Venerable even more alarmed was that from the direction of the Spirit Snake Mountain, the Iceheart Venerable's aura was rapidly approaching at an astonishing speed. She had clearly sensed the earth-shattering fluctuations here, and was hurrying over. The Black Dragon Venerable was both anxious and furious. He glared viciously at the unharmed Fang Chen on the ground, his eyes erupting with overwhelming killing intent. "You think the Golden Scale Venerable can definitely protect you. The Venerables of the 5 declines are each unfathomably profound, and moreover, the Black Dragon Venerable possessed the Purple Crystal Mine, a heaven, defying fortune from beyond the heavens." Who could know just how many world-shaking treasures he had obtained from that crystal mine? Thus, without hesitation, he brought out the Black Dragon battle armor. During these past few days of quiet cultivation, he had already reforged the Black Dragon battle armor with the blood of true spirits, restoring it to its peak condition. It was fully capable of withstanding the residual might of a battle between Venerables of the 5 declines. Almost simultaneously, Black Dragon Exalt suddenly flung his hands upward, hurling out a tattered, irregular scrap of cloth. The cloth scrap was only the size of a palm. After endless eons, its original color had been washed away, its former appearance corroded, leaving only mottled traces. Yet it still emanated a heart-stopping, chilling law fluctuation. Even Golden Scale Exalt couldn't help but sharply contract his pupils. Facing this tattered cloth scrap, a sudden impulse to kneel and worship, as if before a supreme deity arose unbidden in his heart. Even when facing a sage, he would not necessarily feel such profound emotion. However, what truly terrified him was not the cloth scrap itself, but a blurred, indistinct character inscribed upon it. It was impossible to make out what that character truly was. It was not that he couldn't recognize it, but that the character contained a terrifying power so immense that even he, an Exalt, could not fix his gaze on it at all. Black Dragon Exalt roared with sky. "High hatred. I originally planned to keep this to slay Golden Scale Exalt at a critical moment. Now I'll use it on you, you little beast first." His hatred for Fang Chen had already sunk deep into his bones. So much so that he did not hesitate to use this mysterious ancient cloth scrap, originating from the Purple Crystal Mine, to kill Fang Chen. There was only a soft whoosh, as the cloth scrap was hurled viciously. It floated lightly, like a weak feather, spinning leisurely in the air. Yet the incredibly sturdy space barrier of the Central Lands could not withstand the terrifying weight it brought. Wherever the cloth scrap passed, space was compressed into dense, layered folds. Immediately followed by a heaven, rending sharp sound, the space was forcibly torn open into a boundless heaven, piercing void rift stretching 10,000 zhang in length. What followed, naturally, was the terrible devouring force from within the void, capable of swallowing all creation. Black Dragon Exalt had teleported away the moment he threw the cloth scrap. Before leaving, he turned back to cast a savage glance at Fang Chen and said coldly, "In the void, quietly await the torment of death." Such a massive void rift, even an Exalt of the 5 declines of heaven and man falling into it, would face grave danger. Golden Scale Exalt could barely protect himself at this moment, let alone attend to Fang Chen. In that instant when the void tore open, the atmosphere within a radius of 10,000 li was instantly and violently sucked into the void. The earth cracked and collapsed in vast stretches. Primeval forests that had existed for 10,000 years were uprooted in swaths, like scattering soul glimmers, and sucked inside. Ancient and heavy mountain ranges, rivers flowing since time immemorial, all before this sudden heaven and earth catastrophe were like a shattered landscape painting, torn apart, mercilessly swept away. Golden Scale Exalt was likewise swept up by this terrifying spatial force, involuntarily being dragged toward the depths of the void. His face showed horror. He deployed his innate bloodline power and domain force together, but it was utterly useless. Finally, he abruptly used the ancestral seal of Spirit Snake Mountain, slamming a palm fiercely onto a spatial node, and only then barely managed to anchor himself in place. Fang Chen knew he was doomed the moment the 10,000 Zhang Rift appeared. He lowered his head to glance at the Black Dragon battle armor he had summoned, a self-mocking bitter smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. In the next instant, he was viciously swept away by that terrifying spatial force. In the blink of an eye, he was dragged right before the rift. That 10,000 Zhang Rift, like the gaping blood, dripping maw of a prehistoric behemoth, mercilessly swallowed everything in the world. However, just as he was about to resign himself to fate, a golden leaf appeared on his chest without any warning. Fang Chen was momentarily stunned. Was the ugly girl nearby? He subconsciously scanned his surroundings. He saw, within a primeval forest being swept rapidly toward him by the spatial turbulence, atop a tottering tree, the ugly girl in a hemp-long skirt, with crossed eyes and a face full of pustules, standing steadily on the treetop. Was she also caught up in this sudden void eruption? Their eyes met briefly amid the chaotic heavens and earth. The difference was that the ugly girl's expression was far calmer than his. She took out a stone from her bosom, which likewise bore some mysterious carved characters. Fang Chen recalled the sage, carved stone she had once used to turn invisible, and instantly understood that the ugly girl indeed carried means to protect herself. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly, having a master who was an exalt of the 5 declines of heaven and man truly made a difference. Even in such a heaven and earth catastrophe, she had a way to survive. However, the ugly girl did not use the stone on herself. After a deep gaze at Fang Chen, from across the vast sky, she aimed the stone through the air at Fang Chen. Then she silently chanted an incantation. A strand of majestic law force instantly enveloped Fang Chen. Fang Chen, who was about to be swept into the void, felt as if he had swallowed a wind-fixing pearl. The violent spatial force around him actually ignored him, merely swirling gently past his sides. But the ugly girl had no time to use this method on herself. In merely the blink of an eye, she, along with that stretch of primeval forest, was swept into the bottomless void rift. Fang Chen stood before the rift as the ugly girl was devoured by it. They brushed past each other in a fleeting instant. Fang Chen was utterly stunned, his mind going blank. The disciple of the emotion, forgotten old man, that ugly girl he had only met a few times, had actually left him the hope of life and chosen to be buried in the void forever. Why? Why would she do this? The spatial force within the void grew increasingly violent and brutal, and everything swept inside was shattered to pieces. Even though the ugly girl possessed a mid-nascent soul cultivation, she could only barely keep her physical body from being destroyed. But the concealment on her face was completely destroyed by the rampaging spatial force, revealing her true appearance. A city, toppling visage of an 18-year-old, equally enchanting whether angry or smiling, bloomed in an instant within this dark void, stunning all of time and space. This was none other than Yu Mingju. She turned her head back to look at Fang Chen, at the familiar figure rapidly receding into the distance, a trace of deep helplessness in her eyes. Little nemesis, you are truly the bane of my existence. Even though you were so heartless to me, I am still foolishly willing to die for you. So it turned out she had never left Spirit Snake Mountain. Even though she hated Fang Chen to the marrow, even though she had vowed never to see him again in this life. Yet she couldn't bear to leave, and had been silently lingering near Spirit Snake Mountain all along. Deep in her heart, she still harbored a tiny hope that after Fang Chen found Ling Shu, he might occasionally think of her and turn back to find her. If he was willing to come looking, she would forgive Fang Chen. Who would have thought that Fang Chen would suddenly encounter this great void catastrophe? Even more unexpected was that she would, without a moment's hesitation, sacrifice herself to save this faithless man. Yu Mingju watched the figure growing ever smaller in her sight, a bitter smile pulling at the corner of her lips. Am I loving too humbly? I am the sect master of the Blissful Union sect. What I should pursue is to follow my heart's desires without restraint. Since when had she lived so utterly lost to herself, with nothing but Fang Chen left in her heart? A cold tear streak quietly slipped from the corner of her eye, drifting into the boundless void. When she raised her hand to wipe away the tears, she realized that she could no longer see Fang Chen's figure in her sight. The separation of life and death was now sealed. Yet she instead suddenly calmed down, her tear streaked, enchanting face forced out a faint, sorrowful smile. She murmured to herself, as if consoling herself, "Forget it, all of this was my own choice." Abandoning the blissful union sect back then and resolutely following him to take in Grand Prefecture was my choice. Now giving up myself to ensure his survival is also my choice. There is nothing to regret. Who told me I love him? Yu Mingju smiled even as hot tears blurred her eyes once more, letting the spatial force in the void carry her, drifting toward an even colder abyss. Suddenly, she raised her hands to her mouth to form a small trumpet, and with all her strength, shouted her final words toward the direction of that eternal farewell. "See you in the next life." That farewell cry, in the deathly silent and icy void, traveled into the distance alone yet resolutely. Just as Yu Mingju at this moment was falling alone into that abyss of no return. But at that very instant, what made Yu Mingju's delicate body tremble sharply was a low sigh that suddenly sounded right by her ear. Why wait until the next life to meet again? Now I come to you. In Yu Mingju's blurred vision, the figure that had completely vanished moments ago was rapidly expanding. She frantically wiped away her tears with her sleeve. Her sight suddenly cleared, and she saw that Fang Chen had likewise charged straight into this terrifying void. The raging, rampaging spatial turbulence was violently sweeping him further and further away, yet he madly activated the art of spatial manipulation time and time again. Thanks to the mutual attraction and resonance between the gold and silver leaves, every all-out teleport he executed rapidly closed the distance between them. Before Yu Mingju's abruptly widened almond eyes, Fang Chen forcefully teleported right in front of her and seized her icy hand. Feeling the soft warmth spreading from her palm, Fang Chen's long-suspended heart finally settled heavily. Only then did Yu Mingju snap out of her shock and cry out, "Are you insane? Why did you rush in here? This is the void. Once you enter, your life is forfeit." Fang Chen's gaze was so tender it seemed as if water might drip from it. He softly said, "How could I bear to watch you weep alone in the void? Come, let it all out. Cry to your heart's content." As he spoke, he slowly opened his arms. In that instant, Yu Mingju's tears poured down like rain from a shattered dam. All the sorrow, grievance, resentment, and resolve she had harbored crumbled to dust before Fang Chen's gentle words. Unable to suppress the churning emotions any longer, she threw herself into Fang Chen's chest, clenched her fists, and beat fiercely against him, sobbing, You are the worst, most hateful scoundrel under heaven. You have tormented me without end." Fang Chen merely held her tightly in silence, quietly listening to her tearful outburst. He truly owed her too much along this journey. That former sect master of the Acacia sect, who once did as she pleased and captivated all living beings, had now become a foolish woman who thought only of him, willing to throw away even her own life. After weeping for a long while, Yu Mingju gradually stemmed her tears. Yet the anger in her heart remained. She simply opened her mouth and bit down hard on Fang Chen's arm, saying through gritted teeth, "I risked my life to save you, and now you follow me in. Is my death to be in vain?" Fang Chen looked back. The enormous void rift they had come from was already completely lost to sight. He and Yu Mingju had been exiled deeper into the void. Even if they wished to return, there was no longer any path. He reached out, gently tilting Yu Mingju's chin, and gazed into her eyes. "If you are willing to die for me, how could I bear to live on alone?" Yu Mingju's eyes quivered intensely, and a colossal surge of joy and emotion erupted from the depths of her heart. So she truly held such a place in Fang Chen's heart. "Wait, no." She violently jerked her chin away, breaking free from Fang Chen's hand. Crinkling her delicate nose, she snorted heavily. "Spare me that nonsense. I won't fall for your silver tongue ever again. Your heart belongs only to that Ling Shu who keeps calling you big brother all day long. What place is there for me?" As she spoke, she bit her red lips lightly and continued resentfully, You didn't even know I had disappeared." So that was the real reason she had refused to reveal herself when she had disguised as an ugly woman. She had been mistaken all along, thinking Fang Chen had come all the way to the Void Return Prefecture solely to find Ling Shu, caring nothing for her at all. Fang Chen lowered his head, glanced at the gold and silver leaves on their chests that were resonating and intertwining, and suddenly smiled. "If I hadn't been searching for you, how would your master have given these leaves to you and me separately?" Yu Mingju's brows remained tightly knit. She had naturally considered that, but it did not prove beyond doubt that Fang Chen had come specifically for her. After all, she had never walked the Void Return Prefecture under her true identity as Yu Mingju. Don't you try to fool me. I no longer believe a single word from you, you great liar. At most, this only proves you met my master. Fang Chen did not argue further. He simply flipped his palm and produced the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron, holding it gently in his hand. He countered, so now, do I need to prove anything else? Yu Mingzhu stared dazedly at the familiar demon cauldron, and only then was she truly moved. Her voice trembled. You really went to the nascent soul grotto? A deep nostalgia surfaced in Fang Chen's eyes. He said slowly, that place, after all, is where our fate began. Naturally, I would return there to find you. A tremendous, wild joy instantly surged in Yu Mingzhu's heart. Her alluring eyes shone with dazzling brilliance. So, you went to the Great Granary Grand Prefecture, specifically to find me. Fang Chen nodded. You were gone so long, of course I would go look for you. I went to your sect. I went to the nascent soul grotto, and later, I followed the guidance of this Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron all the way to Heaven's remnant city. In that moment, Yu Mingzhu was completely relieved. The suspicions and self-doubt that had long festered in her heart were like dark clouds swept away by a fierce gale, vanishing without a trace. Fang Chen truly cared about her. Not only had he searched, he had actually traveled from the Great Granary Grand Prefecture all the way to this distant void return prefecture. At last, that long, lost, dazzlingly brilliant smile bloomed upon her exquisite face once more. Just like the moment they had first met. She joyfully rose on her tiptoes, puckered her moist, rosy lips, and planted a quick peck on Fang Chen's cheek, then giggled. Seems you do have a conscience after all. I forgive you. Fang Chen rubbed his cheek helplessly, inwardly muttering, since when have I ever lacked a conscience? Just then, Yu Mingzhu recalled something with surprise. By the way, how did you come to know my master? And that old fellow isn't the meddlesome type. Why would he suddenly go to such lengths to matchmake the two of us? If not to save me, he wouldn't even have thought to reveal the terrifying power of the 5 decays of the celestial being. Fang Chen shook his head with a helpless laugh. Perhaps it's because I'm too outstanding, beloved by all who meet me. PFFD. Yu Mingzhu burst out laughing at his expression. She lightly punched his chest and feigned annoyance, though there's some truth in that. Don't get too smug. If you hadn't shown something truly astonishing in front of that old fellow, he'd never work so hard to push us together. Come clean, you must have done something earth-shattering. Quickly, tell me. Fang Chen had not planned to say much, but as he gazed at the deathly silent void around them, he realized that for the rest of their lives, perhaps their only solace would be to confide in each other. So he held nothing back, and recounted to Yu Mingzhu everything, from leaving the nascent soul grotto to the harrowing events that had stained the heavenly abyss 7 cities with blood. When she learned that during a spatial teleportation, Fang Chen's space tunnel had been cleaved apart by a single slash from Zhu Qianzhang, nearly perishing on the spot in an endless bloody mist, an immense pang of regret and heartache flooded Yu Mingzhu's heart. So, Fang Chen had nearly lost his life searching for her, while all this time she had been here, resentful and doubting whether he truly cared. Involuntarily, she wrapped her arms tightly around Fang Chen's waist, burying her soft body completely into his embrace, and whispered, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have left you so willfully. Fang Chen gently stroked her head, comforting softly. No, it was I who neglected you. Later, I arrived at Heaven's remnant city. When he told of his feud with the half-giants and the countless bestial atrocities those mongrels had committed across the heavenly abyss 7 cities, a cold, icy gleam flashed in Yu Mingzhu's eyes. Gnashing her teeth, she said icily, those beasts truly deserve death. When I teleported there back then, they discovered me too. Several half-giants tried to assault me on the spot. If that old fellow hadn't arrived in time, I'm afraid I would have long since. Fang Chen had long suspected that Yu Mingzhu might have faced such horrors. But hearing it with his own ears now instantly ignited the killing intent in his chest. These scum who specialized in rape, plunder, and every evil imaginable. He tightened his embrace around Yu Mingzhu, his voice turning icy. A pity I only managed to kill half of their Dharma Manifestation Realm cultivators back then. Otherwise, I could have fully avenged you. Yu Mingzhu, however, nestled her cheek reassuringly against his chest, and said softly, it is already enough. The death of a single Dharma aspect cultivator is enough to pierce their hearts with grief. You slew half of them in one breath. Their hearts are likely bleeding now. As she said this, a trace of sudden understanding smile appeared on her face. No wonder that old man appreciates you so much. In the nascent soul realm, you cut down half the Dharma aspect cultivators of Sky Ruin City with your sword. Such an earth-shattering feat. Looking across the entire central plains, there are few who could accomplish it. Her cunning gaze flickered, and she added smugly, but that old man probably still doesn't know that his treasured disciple has long since beaten him to it, and already taken this monstrous genius into her own embrace. Yu Mingju beamed at Fang Chen, her bright eyes filled with smugness and pride. Fang Chen was torn between laughter and tears at her coquettishly innocent manner. Finally, he slowly brought up the matter of Liu Ruyan. After hearing this, Yu Mingju couldn't help but sigh softly. With a complicated expression, she said, "So, the #1 beauty of the return to Void Province, renowned throughout the world, the Purple Star Fairy, is actually her. She is actually just a pitiable person too." She knew very well in her heart that Liu Ruyan probably liked Fang Chen. In all the world, absolutely no woman would use her own marriage to secure a future for a man she doesn't care about at all. Yet Liu Ruyan did exactly that. For the sake of Fang Chen obtaining that purple lightning and green frost sword, she did not hesitate to feign acceptance of the marriage as cover, only to resolutely let Fang Chen leave right before that grand wedding. Yu Mingju could almost imagine it. That night, Liu Ruyan, clad in her bridal finery, sitting alone before the cold bronze mirror, silently shedding tears in desolation and helplessness. She looked at Fang Chen and sighed lightly. Why didn't you just go with the flow and marry her? In this world, there are really not many people who treat you like this." Fang Chen was momentarily speechless, only replying with a complex, soft sigh. Yu Mingju frowned slightly and pressed, "Are you still brooding over the thorn of that annulment letter between you two? Actually, I think you might have been a bit too harsh on her. Think about it, at that time, you were nothing more than a mute without spiritual roots, unable to speak. With no emotional foundation between you, what woman would willingly marry you easily for the sake of a childhood promise?" Yu Mingju's gaze focused, and she slowly spoke, her tone carrying a hint of probing meaning. She put herself in their shoes and thought, if it were Fairy Yunsheng, would she be willing? Would Gong Keiyi? Would Liu Qingxian? Probably none of them. Those female confidants around Fang Chen, apart from Liu Ruxu, were all attracted by his brilliance only after he gradually began to stand out. Under the intertwining of various fates, they finally ended up together with Fang Chen. If they were placed in Liu Ruyan's position, could they have done any better than her? It is just that Liu Ruyan was truly too unfortunate. Only after making her choice did she suddenly realize that Fang Chen was the one she truly wanted. Fang Chen slowly shook his head, his expression as calm as a deep pool, and sighed softly. "I have never hated her for anything, so how could I be brooding over it?" Yu Mingju's eyes were full of confusion. She immediately pressed, "Then why did you reject her? She is now the heir of Star Cluster Mountain, the #1 beauty of the return to Void Province, famed throughout the world, and deeply in love with you." Fang Chen raised a hand to interrupt her, his tone calm yet unwavering. "If I accepted her, then what would Liu Ruxu be?" Yu Mingju was momentarily speechless, stunned still. Indeed, between Fang Chen and Liu Ruyan, there still stood Liu Ruxu. Back then, when Fang Chen's engagement was annulled, right at the lowest point of his life, when he had the least brilliance, it was Liu Ruxu who resolutely took up that marriage contract. If Fang Chen were to marry Liu Ruyan now, wouldn't Liu Ruxu's sacrifice become a huge joke? To repay evil with kindness, how then shall kindness be repaid? That is roughly the meaning. Yu Mingju sighed softly and remarked with heartfelt emotion, "Liu Ruxu is indeed remarkable." Although Liu Ruxu always used her status as the primary wife to suppress her, making her quite indignant. Yet if it were someone else in that position, she would only be even more unwilling and resentful. Liu Ruxu was the person who had accompanied Fang Chen all along from his humble beginnings. That pure and flawless companionship, so precious, could not be replaced by anyone. Yu Mingju retracted her gaze, looked at the deathly silent void around them, and sighed helplessly. "Well, actually, it's meaningless to talk about these things now. We'll just have to be a pair of ghost mandarin ducks in the void." However, when she said this, there was not a trace of fear on her face. On the contrary, a sense of unprecedented satisfaction surged from the bottom of her heart. Because, in this desperate situation, this was the only time she could have Fang Chen all to herself. Fang Chen also sighed lightly, his voice tinged with regret. "My death matters little, but it is a pity for you." He was already a man with little lifespan left, but Yu Mingju was not. To die here for saving him was truly not worth it. Unfortunately, it was already too late to say these things. They were already trapped deep within the void. Unless a sage personally descended, no one could rescue them from this place. Just when all hope seemed lost, Fang Chen suddenly glimpsed something moving slowly in the distance from the corner of his eye. He looked sideways, and his heart couldn't help but jump in surprise. It was actually that interlayer world ruin he had previously seen through the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron. Within that ruin, the fate reversal lock was still silently floating. Fang Chen raised an eyebrow with slight surprise and muttered to himself, "Even this I can encounter." After a brief thought, he immediately took out the void fishing rod. At the very moment the two were passing each other, he decisively cast a line, accurately hooking it back. Fang Chen caressed that piece of profound ice and sighed softly. Although it's useless now, after all, it was given by Master Xin Nai. Yu Mingju looked curiously at the void fishing rod in Fang Chen's hand, cautiously reached out a finger to touch it, and said in a crisp voice, "I've long heard that you have a magical fishing rod that can catch great treasures. Today, I'm seeing it with my own eyes." Fang Chen couldn't help but chuckle, and asked with a smile, "How about you give it a try too?" Yu Mingju immediately nodded, giggled happily, and said excitedly, "Okay, I've never fished before." Fang Chen gently embraced her from behind, teaching her hand in hand how to hold the rod, and said warmly, "This fishing rod has two usages. If you silently think of a specific object, it can only trace up to 500 Lai. If you cast it randomly, it will automatically seek the nearest great treasure. As for how many Lai it can cover, I haven't figured out yet. Let's just casually cast a line." Under Fang Chen's guidance, Yu Mingju casually swung the rod toward the void ahead. The fishing line instantly extended infinitely forward and vanished without a trace in the blink of an eye. As for whether they could catch anything, Fang Chen originally held little confidence. This is the void, what could there possibly be to catch? However, not long after, the rod suddenly jerked downwards heavily, the sensation like hooking an immensely heavy behemoth. Yu Mingju immediately cried out excitedly, "Got something, got something." She immediately began to pull with all her strength. Fang Chen also couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "You actually caught a great treasure." A bit curious in his heart, what remarkable thing had Yu Mingju hooked with this cast? As Yu Mingju kept dragging, soon a pitch black object was quickly pulled back from the depths of the void. When the thing was dragged to their side, the smiles on Fang Chen and Yu Mingju's faces instantly froze. No, to be precise, they felt a chill down their spines. Because what had been caught was nothing else but the very thing Fang Chen had personally banished into the void, the calamity crossing Black Lotus. Yu Mingju gasped sharply, a chill instantly shooting from the soles of her feet to the crown of her head. Her palms began to tremble slightly as she stammered in shock, How did you catch this evil thing?" Fang Chen also broke out in goosebumps all over. Especially when he looked at the lotus root that had already begun to take human form, his heart suddenly clenched. After all, a single leaf of the calamity crossing Black Lotus could transform into a hellish creature of the Sage Realm. Then this main lotus body before them, what terrifying existence must it be? However, after a brief moment of shock, Fang Chen quickly regained his composure. Anyway, they were already in a deadly predicament. What more was there to fear? He calmly examined the calamity, averting Black Lotus. Was it his imagination, or did the lotus root seem even more human-like than before? Especially its face. Before, it had only a round head, but now the eye positions had faint indentations, vaguely forming the outline of eyes. This clearly indicated that the calamity, averting Black Lotus, was growing at an alarming speed. Fang Chen couldn't help but mutter under his breath, if it actually grows a human form, could it just become a saint on the spot? Yu Mingju shrank her neck, tightly clutching Fang Chen's arm, and urged, "Throw it away quickly. It's too creepy to look at." Fang Chen nodded slightly. Although he was not afraid of the Black Lotus, it was better to keep such an evil thing as far away as possible. He retrieved the fish hook and, with a casual wave, intended to push it away. He thought the calamity, averting Black Lotus, would just drift away uncontrollably into the void. But who knew at that moment the lotus seed pod on top suddenly moved, slowly rotating in all directions as if sniffing for something. Soon it locked onto the direction behind Fang Chen, and then, under the slightly horrified gazes of the two, it simply lay down. The lotus root faced the direction behind Fang Chen, the seed pod pointing backward. Immediately after, the seed pod violently spewed out in Black Yin Kai, propelling the entire calamity, averting Black Lotus straight toward the direction behind Fang Chen. Fang Chen quickly pulled Yu Mingju aside and watched the Black Lotus in astonishment. Yu Mingju said in shock and uncertainty, this calamity, averting Black Lotus, is actually alive. Fang Chen was inwardly alarmed as well. Judging by its reaction, it was indeed a sentient living thing. But where was it going? When he looked back toward the direction the Black Lotus was heading, Fang Chen's eyes lit up and he shouted joyfully, "It's heading back to the Central Plains. Let's follow it." Wasn't the direction behind them exactly where that void rift was located? Encountering Fang Chen and Yu Mingzhu, this calamity, averting Black Lotus must have sensed, through some kind of perception, that a void rift had opened up nearby again. Thus, it surveyed the surroundings, hoping to seize the chance to return to the Central Plains world. Yu Mingzhu was also overcome with surprise and joy. This was truly a narrow escape from death. Seeing the calamity, averting Black Lotus rapidly moving away, Yu Mingzhu, without thinking, took out her heavenly mountain silk, and with a flick of her hand, the other end accurately coiled around the lotus root's neck. The Black Yin Kai spewing from the seed pod possessed astonishing power. Not only could it contend with the violent spatial turbulence in the void, but now, carrying Fang Chen and Yu Mingzhu along, it flew with effortless ease. In an instant, it swept both of them along, hurtling away in the opposite direction. Yu Mingzhu was overjoyed, hugging Fang Chen tightly and cheering, "We're not going to die. We really have to thank your fishing rod." She looked at the void fishing rod in front of her, her face full of gratitude. If not for this rod hooking the calamity, averting Black Lotus, she and Fang Chen would likely have truly perished in this hopeless void. Fang Chen chuckled softly and gently suggested, "This rod can be used 3 times a day. We've already used it twice, so go ahead and use the last one. Don't waste it. What if you manage to hook another great treasure?" Upon hearing this, Yu Mingzhu looked at the eerily sinister calamity, averting Black Lotus ahead, and frightened, hastily shoved the rod back into Fang Chen's hands, shaking her. He added repeatedly, "Forget it, let's just get back to the Central Plains safely first. If we hook another deadly thing, that won't be fun at all." Fang Chen couldn't help but chuckle and reassured her, "How many evil things can there be in the world? Let me give it a try." Seeing that Yu Mingzhu had actually hooked the calamity, averting Black Lotus in the void, Fang Chen felt a sudden impulse to try his own luck. This interstitial world was so vast, there should be more great treasures than just the calamity, averting Black Lotus. If they could bring back another before leaving the void, that wouldn't be bad at all. With that thought, he casually cast out another rod. Meanwhile, at the location of the void rift, it was a different scene entirely. Golden Scale Venerable was desperately resisting the terrifying suction force, laboriously mending the rift with his domain. He was positioned below, while Iceheart Venerable was above, the two coordinated, one above and one below, slowly repairing the breach bit by bit. The void rift, originally 10,000 zhang long, had now shrunk to about 100 zhang, yet the suction force remained terrifyingly strong. The two had to use their great treasures just to stabilize themselves and avoid being sucked in. Golden Scale Venerable slowly eased his movements and reminded in a low voice Iceheart Venerable, "It's fine to go slower." Iceheart Venerable gazed at the endless void deep within the rift, a trace of guilt that could not be dispelled slowly surfacing on her face. She had originally promised to escort Fang Chen to the Celestial Observatory, but who would have thought that just after leaving the territory of Spirit Snake Mountain, Fang Chen would fall into this terrifying void. Iceheart Venerable's originally crystalline eyes dimmed slightly, yet the speed of her hands mending the rift did not slow at all. She merely sighed softly and said, "Do you still expect him to return? Close the rift quickly to reduce innocent casualties." Earlier, when she had sensed that earth-shaking battle fluctuation and hurried over, the first thing she saw was a terrifying void rift stretching across the sky, 10,000 zhang long. And with her second glance, she saw Fang Chen, who had already stabilized his form in midair. Amidst the raging gale, Fang Chen shouted a name with all his might, Mingzhu. In the next moment, without a shred of hesitation, he leaped into the void that could devour all things, chasing after the figure of that other girl. Gazing at the direction where Fang Chen disappeared, Iceheart Venerable suddenly understood something. She finally understood why the Demon Emperor's consort was willing to follow him willingly. And she finally understood why so many peerless fairy maidens never left his side. Who would not deeply love such a person who would sacrifice his life for them? But with his departure, the 7 from the Moon Realm would probably never be complete again, right? And his many confidantes back home, how heartbroken they must be at this moment. "Ah, what a fool." Iceheart Venerable couldn't help but sigh softly, a deep sense of regret flickering across her heart. She couldn't understand, forsaking so many devoted beauties, forsaking a wonderful life, just to be buried forever in the void for one woman. Was it really worth it? At this moment, the void rift had only 50 zhang left. Iceheart Venerable's movements slowed for an instant, and a faint glimmer of hope actually flashed through her heart. She hoped for a miracle, that Fang Chen could return safely from that death trap. But the next moment, she shook her head bitterly and forced herself to speed up. Because even if she herself or Golden Scale Venerable were banished into the deepest void, there was absolutely no chance of survival. Let alone Fang Chen. As the void rift contracted to its final stage, the terrifying suction force not only didn't weaken, but multiplied several times, making every movement of hers excruciatingly difficult. Thankfully, she and Golden Scale Venerable worked together, slowly closing the rift inch by inch. As the breach shrank to its last zhang, Iceheart Venerable's movements became even more difficult. But at that moment, unexpectedly, the space beside her silently split open a hair. Thin fissure. Huh, why is it cracking again? Iceheart Venerable looked over with astonishment. However, what stunned her on the spot was that from that tiny crack, a fishhook dangled out, swaying. Iceheart Venerable blinked subconsciously and muttered in confusion, "What is this?" Little did she expect, the next instant, the fishhook seemed to lock onto her, turned and lunged at her fiercely. Iceheart Venerable was greatly alarmed and instinctively wanted to dodge. But at that moment her body was completely controlled by the powerful suction force. Forget dodging, she couldn't even move a finger. She could only watch helplessly as the fishhook pounced on her, and then, as if dragging something pink, it swiftly and slickly retreated back into the crack. Ah, you rogue. Binks in Great Venerable suddenly felt a chill at her chest, her usually serene face instantly flushed crimson, and she couldn't help but let out a delicate, involuntary cry. At the same moment, Jinlin Great Venerable exerted his full strength, finally sealing that last zhang, wide crack completely. Hearing Binks in Great Venerable's cry, he quickly turned his head and asked, "What's wrong?" Binks in Great Venerable hastily covered her chest, turning away swiftly, her voice involuntarily stuttering, in nothing. Yet her originally crystal, clear jade-like face was now red enough to almost bleed. Looking down, the exquisite curves of her bosom were clearly imprinted on the soft silk, even the textures faintly visible. She bit her red lips, feeling both embarrassed and angry. Who did this? Within the void. Over here, Fang Chen suddenly felt the fishing rod in his hand dip slightly. Almost instinctively, he immediately raised the rod. Got one. His face brimming with eager anticipation, he intently watched the direction where the fishline pulled taut. Soon, the void fishhook shot back through space. But what hung on the hook was actually a clump of pink silk cloth. Fang Chen held it up in puzzlement, frowning. "What's this?" He squeezed the cloth and flipped it over twice, then suddenly muttered with a strange expression, "Ha, why is it still warm?" As he spoke, he bizarrely lifted that pink cloth to his nose and sniffed. The bewilderment in his eyes deepened, and it smells a little fragrant. Yuezhu, standing beside him, looked at the cloth and felt an increasing sense of familiarity. Her heart skipped a beat. She quickly snatched it away, scolding urgently and angrily, "Don't sniff randomly." Fang Chen rubbed his nose with a speechless expression. "Why are you so worked up?" Yuezhu shot him a glare, holding up the cloth. "Do you even know what this is, sniffing around like that?" Saying so, she shook out the pink silk toward the void, revealing its true form completely. It turned out to be an exquisitely embroidered pink, doo-doo, with a blooming lotus flower. Ah, doo-doo, doo-doo. Fang Chen's old face instantly flushed all the way to his ears, and he hurriedly waved his hands in defense. This has nothing to do with me. It was the void fishing rod. Now, he felt his mind in complete disarray, buzzing loudly. This damn rod, how could it even reel in a doo-doo? Yuezhu glanced at him sideways, saying coolly, "HMPH, the spiritual artifact matches its master." However, after she once again stroked the doo-doo and examined it carefully for a moment, a look of astonishment suddenly appeared on Yuezhu's face. "No, this is a supreme, grade spiritual artifact, and it contains fluctuations of laws." She gasped, staring at Fang Chen. Whose doo-doo did you steal?" "Laws, fluctuations, too." Fang Chen's heart jolted. He quickly concentrated his divine sense, and indeed detected a profound rhythm of laws pervading that thin fabric. What kind of person would have such a heaven-defying level as their undergarment? And clearly, this belonged to a woman. And still warm. The image of a figure with 5 flame marks on the back of her head, temperament calm and gentle, instantly surfaced in Fang Chen's mind. Binks in Great Venerable. Fang Chen shuddered violently, feeling a chill run down his spine. This damn void fishing rod is literally a living Hell King. How dare you hook something that could cost lives? Yuezhu had obviously guessed the owner too, her scalp tingling. This can't be Binks. in Great Venerables, can it? From its color and youthful embroidery style, it had to belong to a young and noble woman, and just now she was near the area where the fishhook opened the rift. Apart from that Binks, in Great Venerable, there is absolutely no one else. Yueju's heart leapt into her throat, and she looked at Fang Chen anxiously. Fang Chen, you must return it quickly. No matter how much she appreciates you, she won't tolerate such an outrageous act. Though the Binks in Great Venerable in her eyes was very gentle and kind, at her core, she was an apex venerable standing at the pinnacle of the human world. How could she allow such offense and desecration? Fang Chen's face was full of bitterness as he spread his hands. Return, how could I explain this? Yueju was immediately rendered speechless. No matter what, any explanation would only make it worse. After a moment's thought, she glanced around at the dead silent void and gritted her teeth. Then we can only quickly throw it away to avoid inviting disaster. Fang Chen subconsciously nodded, but then felt it was such a pity, murmuring, after all, it's an exceedingly rare top-grade defensive spiritual artifact. Throwing it away would be a waste of heaven-sent treasure. How about you wear it? Yueju almost laughed in anger. Giving me another woman's doo-doo to wear. Fang Chen, only you could think of that. Fang Chen looked at her seriously, saying gravely, the ancient giant is coming soon. As the disciple of Forgetful Old Man, you will definitely be a prime target for the giant to kill. A bit more defense on you means one more chance to survive. So he was worried about her safety. Only then did the slight discomfort in Yueju's heart dissipate. She lowered her head to stroke the doo-doo, still with some hesitation in her eyes. Fang Chen suddenly chuckled softly, adding slowly, this should be considered the most precious artifact I have ever given away, I suppose. Hearing that, Yueju's beautiful eyes lit up at once. Truly. Fang Chen smiled and nodded. Even for Chu Ran, I have never given her a treasure of this level. Yueju's face bloomed into a radiant smile, her eyes curving into crescent moons as she said sweetly, hee, then I'll accept it. She made to put it into her spatial storage, but Fang Chen stopped her. Wait, you can't use something from the Great Venerable so directly. Fang Chen quickly took out a bottle of spiritual liquid, poured it over the doo-doo on the spot, and personally rubbed it a few times, thoroughly washing away the lingering aura. There, now even if you wear it right in front of Binks, in Great Venerable, she absolutely won't sense it. Seeing that, Yueju was even more delighted. Since the aura was washed away, it could be considered a newly cleaned thing. Still, she felt it wasn't quite right to take Binks in Great Venerable's possession, and besides, that Great Venerable had always treated Fang Chen well. Fang Chen also felt a trace of apology and solemnly said, don't worry, I will find a suitable opportunity in the future to heavily compensate her. Yueju nodded, only then feeling at ease to put the item away. Oh. Just as she looked down, Yueju suddenly noticed that the heavenly mountain silkworm thread in her hand had instantly gone slack. This clearly meant that the dull black lotus had stopped. So the thread lost that tugging tightness. The dull black lotus isn't moving anymore. Fang Chen's expression changed slightly, his heart sinking, and he chuckled bitterly. It seems the void rift outside has been completely sealed. Indeed. As they drifted forward quietly with the Black Lotus, they suddenly bumped gently against an invisible, intangible barrier. This must be the legendary space barrier that isolates the central continent. Formless and invisible, yet it truly lay across their path. This barrier had protected the central continent from void incursions, but now it also completely blocked their way home. Fang Chen and Yueju exchanged a look, both clearly seeing the deep, bitter smile in each other's eyes. They had just barely glimpsed a shred of hope for survival, yet in the blink of an eye, plunged into even deeper despair. Fang Chen's face was full of unwillingness. It didn't matter if he, Fang Chen, died, but Yueju absolutely could not perish here. Now they had the dull Black Lotus to help resist the erosion of the void. All they lacked was that one non-existent rift. With that thought, a look of resolve flashed in Fang Chen's eyes, and he decisively unleashed the Grand Evolution Sword Formation. The tri-colored divine rainbow, carrying world, annihilating force, struck fiercely at the invisible spatial barrier. Yet, though the barrier was right in front of them, this full-powered strike, comparable to that of a heavenly man of the first decline, seemed to sink into a sea of mud, as if SDR eking empty air with no reaction at all. He did not give up, then successively summoned the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron and even the mighty Divine Wood. However, the result remained completely uneventful, without the slightest ripple. Yu Mingju gently tugged his sleeve and sighed softly. Forget it. Tearing open a void rift is an ability only sages possess. Even the great venerables of the 5 declines can only create void traces one after another, unable to fully tear it apart. Creating a void rift is easier said than done. Fang Chen looked up to the sky and sighed. The middle realm lay right ahead, but was there truly no path back? Gazing at Yu Mingzhu, so close within reach, his heart brimmed with unwillingness. How exactly could the void be torn open? Suddenly, he recalled the tattered cloth fragment that the Black Dragon Great Venerable had thrown out. That cloth fragment, seemingly drifting down casually, had single-handedly crushed the spatial barrier of the middle realm, forcibly creating a void fissure stretching tens of thousands of feet. The reason for such heavenly might was entirely because a mysterious word was imprinted upon that tattered cloth fragment. It was a word that even the Golden Scale, Great Venerable, could not recognize. Naturally, Fang Chen could not recognize it either. But he did know where that word had originated. From the purple crystal mine sinkhole, one of the 8 residual seal characters. He did not have that tattered cloth fragment, but in his hand was a piece of black profound ice from the bottom of the sinkhole. According to the Golden Scale, Great Venerable, this ice was filled with otherworldly force. Moreover, having been steeped in the 8 character seal for a long period, could it possess the power to breach the barrier of the middle realm? With urgent thoughts racing, Fang Chen took out that massive block of profound ice shaped like a coffin. He dared not touch it directly with his hand, so he wrapped it in space arts, suspending it in the air. Yu Mingzhu gazed at the profound ice, and also sensed its unusual nature, her expression one of bewilderment. Fang Chen looked at her with a heavy gaze and said slowly, "If even this fails, then I fear we will truly be exiled forever in this void." With those words, his mind suddenly stirred. Mighty spatial power instantly enveloped the profound ice, sending it smashing fiercely into the spatial barrier before them. With a muffled hum, the originally invisible spatial barrier actually produced a faintly discernible ripple from the impact. Fang Chen's face lit up with joy, while Yu Mingzhu's almond-shaped eyes widened abruptly. After all, their previous attacks had all been like clay oxen entering the sea, as if striking at empty air. Yet this black profound ice before them could actually create ripples upon impact. However, this joy did not last long. Because the black profound ice only produced ripples, Fang Chen slammed it repeatedly several times, and the result was the same each time. One could only say that the black profound ice, as he speculated, did contain a trace of the might from that seal. But it seemed far from enough. Fang Chen gave a bitter smile as he put an arm around Yu Mingzhu and said hoarsely, "It seems we truly are to become a pair of ghost lovers." Yu Mingzhu leaned gently into his embrace, closed her eyes, and said, "To die together with you is fate's final favor to me." But just as the two had completely given up, the calamity, crossing Black Lotus, suddenly stirred. It drifted slowly in front of the black profound ice, circled it twice, as if deep in contemplation. After a moment, its long lotus stem extended slowly and tightly wound around the black profound ice. Immediately after, a large amount of pitch black yin energy gushed from its seed pod, its speed surging as it charged fiercely toward the spatial barrier. It intended to carry the black profound ice and forcefully crash head on into the spatial barrier. Moreover, as the lotus stem tightened continuously, the otherworldly force within the black profound ice began to leak out in wisps. Before even fully approaching the spatial barrier, it already triggered violent rippling. Seeing this, Fang Chen's heart leaped, and he shouted urgently, "Prepare. There's a real chance this time to force open a fissure." That otherworldly force had originally been tightly sealed deep within the black profound ice, and Fang Chen had no way to activate it. Now that the calamity, crossing Black Lotus, forcibly released a portion of it, its power was naturally on a completely different level from before. Yu Mingzhu also quietly tightened her grip on the heavenly mountain silk thread in her hand. Ordinary void fissures would be self-repaired by the middle realm world, often closing in an instant. Opportunity fleeting in the blink of an eye. If this attempt failed, unless Fang Chen could produce a second piece of black profound ice, they would be trapped forever in this void. With a deep dong sound, like the resonant tolling of an ancient temple bell, a profound and lingering noise suddenly reverberated. The black profound ice slammed heavily into the spatial barrier, triggering widespread ripples. The otherworldly force swirling around seized the moment to penetrate the spatial barrier, actually corroding it into a ghastly pale ripple. It was clear the middle realm had been breached. But that fissure was far too small, utterly insufficient for a person to pass through. And indeed, the self-repairability of the middle realm world activated at that very moment. That patch of pale ripple was rapidly disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Fang Chen's expression changed slightly. The calamity, crossing Black Lotus, could not release all the otherworldly force after all, resulting in a fissure not large enough. This was their only chance. He glanced sideways at Yu Mingju, who was right before his eyes, and a flash of extreme decisiveness crossed his heart. With a flash of spiritual light from his sleeve, an ancient mirror dropped down. It was the spatial mirror. He had already pondered this scenario repeatedly. If the fissure was not large enough for him to escape, he would at least force Yu Mingju and the little Qilin out. And this spatial mirror was the best method. No matter how small, the fissure would still be enough for the spatial mirror to pass through. He only needed to put Yu Mingju inside the mirror. Without a moment's delay, Fang Chen rapidly shouted, "Quick, enter the spatial mirror. This is our last chance." Yu Mingju did not doubt him for a second, offering no resistance, letting the mirror's suction force draw her inside. Naturally, Fang Chen did not follow. He merely tossed his heavenly thunder stone in. Then he mustered all the power in his body and hurled the spatial mirror fiercely toward that fissure. Powerful spatial force obstinately hindered the mirror, preventing it from passing through. Fang Chen gritted his teeth, no longer caring about the madness, inducing otherworldly force within the black profound ice. He snatched the profound ice from the calamity, crossing Black Lotus, and smashed it heavily against the spatial mirror. The spatial force was smashed apart in one blow, and the mirror finally broke through the obstruction. In the final instant before the white fissure completely vanished, it traversed through, perilously close to failure. With a light humming sound, a layer of ripples gently spread, and that white fissure ultimately disappeared completely. The void returned to darkness once more. Fang Chen was also swallowed by the void, yet a look of heartfelt relief appeared on his face. His lips moved slightly as he murmured, "Live well, Mingju." As for himself, deep within his sea of consciousness, an irrepressible madness suddenly surged. It was the otherworldly force directly triggering his insanity. Subconsciously, Fang Chen wanted to use the sage's blood within his body to neutralize it, but when he saw the pitch black void all around, he abandoned the idea completely. There was no longer a need to distinguish whether he was lucid or mad. Even slowly withering away in madness within the void was better than dying in agony while clear-headed and in despair. Just as he resigned himself to death, the calamity, crossing Black Lotus, slowly flew toward him. Its coiling stem twisted and writhed like a snake, exuding an aura of confrontation and accusation. It was clearly an ill-intentioned arrival. Fang Chen's heart tightened. He had witnessed the power of that coiling stem firsthand. Even the incredibly hard, black profound ice had been easily crushed into pieces by its winding. That was a rare object that even the golden scale, Great Venerable, could not shatter. If he were to be entangled by that coiling stem, the consequences need no explanation. However, after a brief moment of hair-raising terror, his state of mind gradually returned to calm. He gave a self-deprecating smile and said, "We are both wanderers at the end of the world. Why rush to kill each other?" As if understanding his words, the wildly dancing stem of the calamity, crossing Black Lotus, gradually quieted down, yet still headed straight for Fang Chen. No one knew what it really wanted. Fang Chen carefully scrutinized this extremely bizarre calamity, crossing Black Lotus for the first time, and asked thoughtfully, "What exactly are you? Why are the demon clans so terrified of you descending upon the Middle Realm? And also, when I was dragged into that interlayer world back then, could it have been your secret manipulation?" He had always felt that incident was eerily strange. Back then, he had clearly already left the range of the spatial fold, yet he seemed to be precisely targeted, swept in by a sudden spatial fluctuation. Now it appears that the eerie fluctuation is undoubtedly connected to this mysterious deliverance, Black Lotus. But why would it target him specifically? What could he possibly possess that even the deliverance, Black Lotus, coveted? Suddenly, his heart jolted violently. The primordial void ancient tree. Both being heavenly spiritual plants, the Deliverance Black Lotus's sensitivity to the primordial void ancient tree must far surpass that of other beings. So it seemed that the entity's painstaking efforts to summon him to the interlayer world was a scheme to kill two birds with one stone. First, to use him to escape the interlayer world. Second, to seize the primordial void ancient tree within him. Watching the Deliverance Black Lotus drift over unhurriedly, Fang Chen narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Your heart is truly venomous. To escape the interlayer world yourself, you wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice all living beings in this hell. Once the Deliverance Black Lotus departs, It would directly cause the interlayer world to collapse, yet it still chose to do so. Such viciousness is truly heinous beyond measure. The golden scale Great Venerable forbidding it from setting foot in the central plane was clearly not without reason. Fortunately, this malicious thing would eventually wither and die along with him in this void, never to harm anyone again. As for the primordial void, ancient tree being taken away, if life itself is lost, what use is the primordial void ancient tree? Let it take what it wants. In the end, none will escape death. By now, the Deliverance Black Lotus had leisurely arrived right before Fang Chen. Dark yin energy gushed from its seed pod, enveloping him in vast swaths. Fang Chen's body grew colder and colder, his vitality draining at an unprecedented pace. He offered no resistance, merely closing his eyes slowly, too weary to struggle fruitlessly in this void. But just at that moment, in the eternally silent void above, a moon abruptly materialized without warning. A graceful figure descended from the moonlight at this critical juncture. With a flick of her wrist, a strand of heavenly mountain silkworm thread, fine as a gossamer, shot out and precisely wrapped around Fang Chen. With sudden force, she yanked him back from the churning yin energy. Fang Chen's eyelids trembled as he forced them open, and what met his gaze was a lovely face brimming with fury. It was none other than Yu Mingju. He suddenly realized that the hazy moon above was no moonlight at all, but the doping base of the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron. Fang Chen stood frozen in shock. In that instant, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a small furry head poking out from the moon beneath the cauldron. The head sported a tuft of flame, red fur, and a pair of large, distinctly black, and white eyes rolled about cleverly. Who could it be but the little Killen? It dawned on Fang Chen instantly, this must have been the little Killen's idea. The little thing must have witnessed the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron's power to connect to the void, and thus seized the moment to activate the treasure. Yu Mingju pulled Fang Chen close, and without a word, clenched her fist, poised to strike him. But just as her fist was about to land, it halted abruptly in midair. She suddenly released her fist, and instead hugged Fang Chen with all her might. That face, once seething with anger, instantly streamed with tears as she sobbed and cried out, "You bastard, how could you deceive me? Did you think this was heroic, chivalrous, and that I would be deeply moved? You are wrong. I will hate you to death. How could you abandon me and go off to die alone?" It turned out that the moment Yu Mingju successfully returned to the central plane, she had suddenly understood. Fang Chen intended to sacrifice himself so that she might live. In that instant, her heart held no joy of survival, only the anguish of utter despair. If Fang Chen died for her, how could she go on living alone in this world? Thankfully, the little Killen had a sudden flash of wit and devised this method, allowing them to catch Fang Chen just before the spatial force could sweep him away completely. Boundless tenderness rippled in Fang Chen's eyes as he reached out and gently stroked her back, saying warmly, "Didn't you also leap into the void for me, where even now?" Yu Mingju's crimson lips parted slightly, about to speak, when the corner of her eye caught a horrifying sight. The Deliverance Black Lotus was chasing after them. Its seed pod was wildly spewing vast amounts of yin energy as it pursued them at a terrifying speed. Panic seized her heart, and she instinctively looked up toward the cauldron mouth, a desperate thought of returning surging within her. And then a miraculous scene unfolded. The Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron suddenly emitted a massive pulling force, instantly sweeping her and Fang Chen up and rapidly ascending. In just a few breaths, the two reached the edge of the cauldron's bottom. Yu Mingju turned and scrambled back through first, with Fang Chen following closely behind. However, the moment half his body had just passed through, his legs were abruptly entangled by something, and he became stuck fast at the cauldron's bottom, unable to move. Yu Mingju peered down through the gap and immediately gasped in horror. Down below, the Deliverance Black Lotus had already caught up. Its dragon, like tendrils, clung fiercely around Fang Chen's legs. It was even using Fang Chen's body as a stepping stone, madly spreading toward the central plane. And Fang Chen's body was being dragged back, inch by inch. Yu Mingju paled in terror and desperately clung to Fang Chen, pulling with all her strength. But how could her solitary strength match the savage force of the Deliverance Black Lotus? As his waist and below were once again pulled into the void, a fierce glint flashed in Fang Chen's eyes. He stretched out his hand toward the little Killen nearby, and with a resounding clang of a sword's cry, purple lightning instantly shot up and flew straight into his grasp. Without the slightest hesitation, he swung the sword back and ruthlessly hacked at his own lower body. Even with Fang Chen's iron will, he couldn't suppress a cry of extreme agony. Yu Mingju's face instantly paled in horror, but she had no time to think. She decisively supported Fang Chen's remaining upper body and flew out of the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron. Then she swiftly channeled her soul power, and the heavy cauldron lid slammed shut with a boom. Just as the lid barely closed, a terrifyingly heavy impact crashed against it, making the entire lid hum and vibrate. It was unmistakably the Deliverance Black Lotus, trying to force the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron open again. One attempt failing, it rammed twice. Twice failing, it rammed 3 times. The relentless impacts rumbled like thunderous booms, one after another. Only after 10 full breaths did the terrifying pounding finally subside. Even through the Nine-Dragon Demon Cauldron, everyone could feel the seething fury emanating from the void. Only then did the tension in Yu Mingju's heart ease slightly. She finally found a moment to look at Fang Chen and was horrified to see that his face had turned a metallic gold from excessive blood loss, his breath rapidly fading, his life draining away swiftly. His life was nearly spent. Fortunately, the little Killen reacted with lightning speed. It ran over carrying a heavenly thunderstone in its mouth and, with practiced ease, pulled out a fluffy rabbit tail from within. Using its tiny claws, it plucked a luminous tuft of rabbit fur and carefully sprinkled it onto Fang Chen's wound. And behold, his missing lower body rapidly restored a portion. Seeing one tuft wasn't enough, the little Killen simply pressed the entire rabbit tail against the wound. That already broken body began to regrow, defying all natural law. In a short while, a pair of fair jade, white legs, brimming with potent strength, grew anew. Only then did the pain on Fang Chen's face finally subside. Weakly he raised a hand and stroked the little Killen's round head, saying softly, "This time, it's all thanks to you." The little Killen nuzzled its furry head against his face and actually spoke in a childish, milky voice, "I don't want Master to die again." The time the Sky Demon Emperor had slain Fang Chen had nearly parted them forever by death. That scene remained etched deeply in the little Killen's heart. Fang Chen gently rubbed its little head and soothed, "Not anymore. Master won't die so easily again." With that, he turned his head to look at Yu Mingju. But he saw Yu Mingju staring fixedly between his legs, as if deeply shocked by some sight. Fang Chen's pale face instantly flushed crimson. He hastily yanked the Bodhisattva's Kasaya from the heavenly thunderstone and wrapped it around his newly reconstructed lower body. Yu Mingju abruptly came to her senses, her jade-like face instantly flushing crimson. Stammering, she explained, You don't misunderstand. I wasn't looking around. I was just astonished. How could that old codger bear to cut off his big white rabbit's tail and give it to you? That big white rabbit is his most treasured possession. Even if I merely wanted to pluck a single strand of its fur, he'd glare at me with fierce brows and furious eyes. How could he possibly bear to give you an entire rabbit tail? Hearing this, Fang Chen couldn't be bothered to explain that the rabbit tail had been accidentally severed by him long ago. He merely fixed her with an amused half-smiling gaze and said meaningfully, "It's fine even if you were looking. Between us, is there any need to stand on ceremony?" Before his words even faded, amid Yu Mingju's startled cry, he swept her into his arms and seated her upon his lap. Then he kissed her deeply. Yu Mingju felt her mind go buzz, instantly blanking out, completely losing the ability to think. She could only let Fang Chen have his way. It was only a long while later, when a roving hand stealthily slipped into her collar and climbed onto the true whiteness of her chest, that Yu Mingju jolted awake. She leaped from Fang Chen's embrace in fright, her youthful maiden's face completely overtaken by a deep, mortified blush. Stammering, she scolded, You're far too brazen." Fang Chen, however, smiled playfully. This is hardly the reaction of the sect master of the Blissful Union sect. Yu Mingju's cheeks burned even hotter. Having long grown accustomed to the sordid affairs of those cultivating the Tao of dual cultivation within her sect, she should have been utterly unruffled by such matters. Yet when it actually happened to herself, she was no different from a sheltered young maiden. This made her both ashamed and angry. She couldn't help stamping her foot and coquettishly retorted, "HMPH, don't think I'll just muddle. Headedly give myself to you like Gong Kei did. All you men are the same. When you can't have something, you're the best in the world. Once you get it, you stop cherishing it at once. I absolutely won't be like Gong Kei. Once you've had your way, you just abandon me on the continent without a second thought." Hearing her mention this, Fang Chen felt a mix of amusement and exasperation. When had he ever abandoned Gong Kei? But he didn't bother to explain further. It was better that Yu Mingju held her own thoughts. As a man nearing death, If he merely coveted her body, without being able to give her a future, wouldn't he be harming her? After changing into a fresh pair of trousers, he straightened up, draped an arm around her fragrant shoulders, and together they gazed out upon the majestic rivers and mountains of the Middle Continent. Gazing at the boundless primeval forest and inhaling the familiar fragrance of the Middle Continent's flora, Fang Chen exhaled deeply and said slowly, "Since I've managed to survive by sheer luck, then let me burn brightly for the final battle of the Middle Continent. Will you return with me to take Great Prefecture?" Yu Mingju's lashes drooped, her eyes brimming with apology. Softly, she said, "Since you ask like that, you must have already guessed the answer in your heart. The wild elder of forgotten emotions has shown me kindness as heavy as a mountain. He plans to do an earth-shattering deed after the ancient giants descend and needs a trusted person to help. And there is only me, his sole disciple." Fang Chen held her tightly and said understandingly, "It's fine. We're all fighting for the Middle Continent. I support you." Yu Mingju was left speechless, the guilt in her heart deepening further. Fang Chen had braved countless dangers to seek her out, yet in the end she couldn't return with him to the heart of the Middle Continent. And she wouldn't even give him her body. She lightly bit her luscious red lips, then suddenly stood on tiptoe, leaned close to Fang Chen's ear, and breathed out like an orchid, whispering, "Let's go back to Gixu Prefecture. Marry me. Then I'll do anything you ask." Gazing at the exquisitely alluring face before him, Fang Chen's heart gave a sudden, powerful leap. But did he still have time? According to Tianji's prophecy, there were only 10 days left before the Great War with the ancient giants. After deducting the 5 days required to return to the Imperial Observatory, he had less than 5 days remaining, and he still had far too many things left undone. For instance, he had yet to break through to the 9 Aperture's nascent soul stage, let alone divine transformation. That breakthrough alone might not be feasible within a mere 5 days. Yu Mingju noticed the difficulty in Fang Chen's expression. Her eyes dimmed for a moment, but she quickly amended, "Then let's wait until after the ancient giant war, all right." Fang Chen finally nodded. Yu Mingju's face lit up with intense delight. She eagerly extended her slender pinky finger and chirped, "Then let's pinky swear." Seeing her childlike manner, Fang Chen was both amused and bemused. Wasn't this just a child's game? Yet he still extended his own pinky and solemnly swore, "After the ancient giant war, if I am still alive and Yu Mingju remains, I shall give her a splendid, grand wedding." This was the second woman Fang Chen had openly vowed to marry. Yu Mingju's eyes shimmered with joyful tears. She hooked her pinky tightly around Fang Chen's, her voice trembling faintly. "We pinky swear, 300 years, no changes." Their 2 pinkies locked tightly together in the dusk. Like an unbreakable chain of destiny, they gleamed brightly in the fading rays of the setting sun. 5 days later, Myriad Demon's Great Prefecture, Imperial Observatory. Fang Chen escorted Yu Mingju to the prefectural teleportation Array Island bound for Gixu Prefecture. He smoothed the stray strands of hair on her forehead and said softly, "We'll meet again after the ancient giant war. Take care." With the deepest reluctance, Yu Mingju pulled away from Fang Chen's embrace. She looked back time and again, but in the end, she stepped into the grand teleportation array. As the formation's resonant hum arose, a searing white light surged forth like a tidal wave, instantly engulfing her delicate silhouette. Fang Chen waved, forcing a faint smile onto his face. "Leave on, Mingju." Gazing at the gradually blurring figure waving goodbye, Yu Mingju's heart suddenly seized with an inexplicable tremor. She had a vague sense that this felt like an eternal farewell. But there was no time to say more. She could only pour all her strength into one word, cherish, before the irresistible force of space swept her away, drifting into the distance. When the white light finally dispersed, the smile on Fang Chen's face slowly faded. He stood there in silence for a long while. After a moment, he murmured softly to himself, "Live on well. No matter whether you can ever see me again." Having said that, he inhaled deeply and soared over to the teleportation island, bound for taking Great Prefecture. Just as he was about to enter, a series of silvery, bell-like, crisp laughter rang out from the main hall of the central island. "Grand Libationer, the Black Dragon Exalted, has fled with his entire cave abode. Our Myriad Demon's Great Prefecture has lost a supreme defender against the enemy." Inside the Great Hall, a commander who had rushed back from Spirit Serpent Mountain was reporting with the utmost gravity. No matter. When the sky collapses, the tall ones will hold it up." The Grand Libationer laughed dismissively, waving a hand with utter nonchalance. Hearing this from the side, Fang Chen couldn't help but secretly admire the Grand Libationer's fortitude. In the face of this great calamity, she, a woman alone, had stepped forth to hold up the heavens for the countless beings of myriad demons' great prefecture. Compared to the drunken sot of a grand libationer in Great Wilderness Prefecture, the promiscuous scoundrel from Hunyuan Prefecture, and the weepy crybaby of Giksu Prefecture, Grand Libationer of myriad demons was truly quite normal. The commander was overjoyed and asked excitedly, Grand Libationer, by saying that, could it be that you already have a way to turn the tide? The Grand Libationer threw her head back and laughed, not a damn thing. I no longer have any chance to act. You'll have to rely on yourselves to fend off the ancient giant's descent. The commander's expression instantly froze. Stammering, he asked Th, then, with only the golden scale exalted and the other demons, what are the chances of holding them off? The Grand Libationer burst into laughter once more, the sound exaggerated beyond measure. Ha ha ha, that's an excellent question. In my opinion, we have at least a 10% chance of victory. 10%? Wasn't that practically a death sentence? The commander was utterly stunned. Trembling, he asked, then how can you still laugh, Grand Libationer? The Grand Libationer laughed up at the sky until tears streamed down, yet not a shred of joy could be heard in that laughter. I want to cry too. But I simply can't cry, so I can only laugh. Yahoo-ha, ha-ha-ho-ha, tilde. The eerie laughter echoed through the great hall, sending chills down Fang Chen's spine. He immediately bolted, slunk into the teleportation array, and activated the formation with lightning speed. As a burst of white light swallowed him, he was teleported out the next moment. Once his feet were firmly planted, he let out a long sigh of relief. I take back my earlier words. The Grand Libationer of the 10,000 Demons' Great State is also an extremely abnormal fellow. Fang Chen held his forehead, feeling rather speechless. It truly matched what the Commandant of the Great Wilderness State had said. Apart from the Grand Libationer of the Tai Kang State, who seemed a bit more normal, the other Grand Libationers all had something wrong with their heads. The Grand Libationer of the 10,000 Demons' Great State was no exception. Considering the law of everlasting smile she gave to Fang Chen, she and the Grand Libationer of the Return to Nothingness State were complete opposites. One loved to cry. The other loved to laugh. And the terrifying type that would laugh even in death. What's wrong with the Grand Libationers? Fang Chen was thoroughly puzzled. How is it that perfectly fine people are all somewhat abnormal? Moreover, that laughing Grand Libationer actually said she had no opportunity to make a move. Why is that? Could it be that during the ancient giant war, the Grand Libationers are bound by some rules and cannot act freely? That can't be right. When dealing with the hellish creatures, that laughing Grand Libationer certainly fought fiercely. Soon as the teleportation power intensified, a strong sense of dizziness overcame him, making it impossible for him to focus his thoughts any further. Meanwhile, at Spirit Serpent Mountain, Golden Scale Great Lord gazed at the devastated mountain range, riddled with holes, and the countless dead and wounded demon clan subjects. Uncontrollable fury surged on his face. If the ancient giants fail to kill that Black Dragon Great Lord, I will personally annihilate him. Even if I have to chase him to the ends of the earth, I will take his head to sacrifice to these innocent departed souls. As it turned out, while Golden Scale Great Lord and Ice Heart Great Lord were repairing the Void Rift, that Black Dragon Great Lord had gone mad, fled back to Spirit Serpent Mountain and uprooted his entire cave dwelling. Before leaving, out of sheer vengeance, he massacred the demon clan of Spirit Serpent Mountain. Although the two great lords rushed back in time, there were still heavy casualties. They spent several days doing rescue work, but could not save many lives. At this critical juncture, when the ancient giants could descend at any moment, the Black Dragon Great Lord repeatedly caused massive casualties among the demon clan. This sin was no thing short of being a traitor to the demon race. Iceheart Great Lord sighed softly and said gently, "Fortunately, your daughter and that girl Ling Shu narrowly escaped this calamity. Otherwise, I truly wouldn't know how to account to Fang Chen's departed spirit." Hearing this, Golden Scale Great Lord's eyes filled with shame. Counting the days, 5 days had already passed. Fang Chen had likely drifted to the deepest part of the void. Most probably, he had already perished in the terrifying spatial currents within the void. Not only had he failed to protect Fang Chen, he had almost been unable to safeguard Ling Shu as well. Filled with remorse, he cupped his hands toward Iceheart Great Lord and said gravely, "I ask Iceheart Great Lord to temporarily keep the news of Fang Chen's death a secret. At least they must not know of this before the ancient giant war ends. Iceheart Great Lord's eyes brimmed with pity as she gazed into the distance at the two delicate girls on the earth. Especially that young woman named Ling Shu. After all the hardships, she had finally seen the clouds part and the moon shine with Fang Chen, only to end up separated by life and death. She nodded gently and sighed. How could I bear to tell them the truth? Then she shook her head and changed her tone. Since the Black Dragon Great Lord has fled the 10,000 demons' great state, I will take my leave. Golden Scale Great Lord asked, are you going to Tai Kang State? Iceheart Great Lord did not hide it and said bluntly, yes, I need to find the holder of the ancient wilderness command medallion and test whether he is qualified to hold it. If not, I will need to find a new master for this medallion. Golden Scale Great Lord nodded in strong agreement. It is only proper. The ancient wilderness command medallion is our Central Plains' last retreat. If the Central Plains battlefield is utterly defeated, all hope will rest on it. The holder must not fail. Do you need my help? Iceheart Great Lord shook her head. I have a way to find him. However, there is something else I wish to consult you about, Golden Scale Great Lord. At this mention, Iceheart Great Lord, known for her gentle and pure demeanor, instantly darkened her expression. You often travel through the various states. Have you ever seen a peculiar artifact? It is a fishing line with a golden fishhook attached. Golden Scale Great Lord looked thoughtful. A fishing line and fishhook. It should be some artifact used for fishing, right? I have truly never seen such a thing. Why do you ask? Iceheart Great Lord involuntarily raised a hand to cover her chest. These past few days, the more she thought about it, the angrier she became, and the angrier she became, the more she dwelled on it. Who could be so shameless and perverted? To dare steal her belly band? No, seriously, is he sick in the head? If she didn't ferret out this despicable lecher, grind his bones to dust and scatter ashes, she could never quell the hatred in her heart. Iceheart Great Lord secretly clenched her delicate fists and ground her silver teeth. Nothing. I just detest those damned anglers who can catch everything except fish. Farewell. She cupped her hands in salute, and her figure instantly transformed into a streak of light, teleporting away. Leaving Golden Scale Great Lord standing there stunned, muttering to himself, this, who provoked her to such a state. Tai Kang State. Fang Chen was leaning against a wall, unable to stop bouts of dry heaving. This damned state-level teleportation array, even a dog wouldn't ride it. From the doorway came the hoarse laughter of the Grand Libationer, who had been waiting for some time. You said that exact line when you returned from the primordial chaos state. Fang Chen's old face flushed red with embarrassment, and he countered, that was me yesterday speaking. It has nothing to do with me now. If you want to blame someone, go find yesterday's me. The Grand Libationer rose to his full height and shook his head with a smile. Good, these are words only the real Fang Chen would say. It seems you have not been possessed by that calamity, dispelling Black Lotus. Oh. Fang Chen was truly puzzled in his heart. He almost got entangled by the calamity, dispelling Black Lotus. That was something that happened in the void, right? At that time, only himself, Moon Pearl, and the little Killin were present. How did the Grand Libationer, separated by a great state, come to know about it? It was truly like seeing a ghost. He couldn't help but ask out of curiosity, Grand Libationer, do you have some close connection with the Grand Libationers of the other states? The Grand Libationer flicked the horsetail whisk in his hand, smiled blandly, and uttered only two words, guess. Guess my ass. Fang Chen inwardly grumbled. Fang Chen asked in exasperation, since you are at the Sage Realm, why didn't you intervene when the two-star giant King Xin Feng was causing chaos? Thinking back, he, the Bodhisattva, and Vice Palace Lord, you had almost died at the hands of that two-star giant king. The Grand Libationer responded with a nonchalant expression, aren't you still alive? Fang Chen felt his chest tighten from those words, and could only glare fiercely at him. But Fang Chen didn't harbor much resentment. He faintly sensed that these Grand Libationers were very cautious in making moves. Take the grave, weeping Grand Libationer of the primordial chaos state, for example. When the immaculate Great Lord came to the Central Plains and was so arrogant, he never made a move. Only at the very end, when Immaculate was about to launch a killing blow against Fang Chen and Star Abyss Great Lord, did he have no choice but to intervene. Or take the crybaby Grand Libationer of the Return to Nothingness state. He didn't directly attack Heavenly Remnant City, but instead blocked the senses of the benevolent Heart Sage, letting Fang Chen handle it himself. It seemed they were wary of something, and dared not use their abilities lightly. Fang Chen sighed softly, his gaze passing the Grand Libationer to look toward his homeland in the Tai Kang state, and asked, "Has anything happened in Tai Kang State during my absence?" The Grand Libationer replied calmly, the calm before the storm. This meant everything was peaceful. But perhaps this was the final piece. Fang Chen looked toward the firmament and murmured, "Only 5 days remain." The Grand Libationer said nothing, only took out a purple jade pendant and gently ran his fingers over it. A rapid beeping sound was heard, and Fang Chen's identity, jade token, suddenly vibrated. He opened it and saw it was a message sent by the Imperial Observatory to all members of the sects. The content was only 2 simple words, 5 days. Fang Chen's heart grew heavy and he murmured, "Only 5 days remain. I wonder if the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion is prepared." He gazed toward the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, his heart yearning to return, and cupped his hands in farewell. Junior takes his leave. The Grand Libationer's sleeve robe lashed out, whipping up a sharp, biting gale. A massive black sword as pitch, dark as ink and like a rift of nothingness, plunged into the ground before Fang Chen, wrapped in overwhelming spiritual pressure. The sword was over 10 feet long and radiated a powerful, malevolent intent. Just one glance and Fang Chen felt scorn and contempt emanating from the blade. If this sword could speak, Fang Chen had no doubt it would be spewing curses already. Moreover, the sword's malevolent intent could erode one's will. Fang Chen's heart grew restless, suddenly flooded with lust, murderous thoughts, thieving impulses, and other negative emotions. This sensation was somewhat similar to facing the blood pool, just not quite as severe. Fang Chen growled lowly, "What a wicked sword." The lightning power within him swiftly coursed through, purging all the invading evil. The Grand Libationer observed this, nodded slightly, and said, "It seems you can wield this sword, take it. This is your reward for the Heavenly Realm scouting mission." Fang Chen was stunned. He had almost forgotten that he even had such a reward. "How long has it been?" He grasped the giant 10-foot sword with both hands, felt its immense spiritual pressure, and joy welled in his heart. This is indeed a top-grade spirit sword. With the 4 I already have, that makes 5 spirit swords. If I can gather 1 more, making 6 swords, the Grand Yan sword formation can be cultivated to completion. The unleashed power then would be far beyond anything now. Fang Chen decisively stored the sword, rolled his eyes, and complained, "Isn't this reward a bit too late? I've waited so long the flowers have all withered." The Grand Libationer pressed his hand against the spatial storage device in his bosom and said flatly, "I have nothing here for you to extort." Having dealt with Fang Chen so many times, he knew that whenever Fang Chen so much as wiggled his rear, he could guess the color of the dung about to come out. Fang Chen gave a huge eye roll and said, "Farewell." The Grand Libationer, however, nodded and said, "Extort something? No, but there is a reward." Fang Chen's eyes lit up. What does the Grand Libationer need me to do? Actually, he already had a vague guess. Indeed, the Grand Libationer said, the sky, piercing black pillar needs to be moved into the Calamity Forbidden Land. That is the most dangerous place in the Central Plains. The ancient giants descending there will suffer considerable harm. Without a moment's thought, Fang Chen said, "I don't need a reward to do it. On the last day, I'll move the sky, piercing black pillar." With that, he executed the cloud shadow movement technique, his form flickering and vanishing. Now, after Fang Chen departed, the scene shifts to the vast ocean. Countless colossal merchant ships gathered on the sea, lined up in a row, majestic and imposing. Among them, a luxurious merchant ship, flying a golden flag with the character trade, was surrounded by many other ships like stars clustering around the moon. This luxurious merchant vessel was engraved with numerous, powerful formations. One of those formations actually emanated the spiritual pressure of the divine transformation stage. Such a top-tier merchant ship was unique not only in taking great province but across the entire Central Plains. It was the personal warship of the Pavilion, Master of Fang Chen, First-Class Pavilion. At this moment, inside the cabin, 8 individuals wearing masks or shrouded in mist sat around a round table. The only one showing his true face was the Pavilion Master of Fang Chen, First-Class Pavilion. He looked around at everyone, his voice gentle as a spring breeze, and asked, "There's still one Vice Pavilion Master not here, correct?" Today was the final high-level meeting of Fang Chen, First-Class Pavilion, before the war. The main topic was the tasks the pavilion would undertake during the conflict. The Vice Pavilion Master shrouded in mist responded, "Vice Pavilion Master Gu didn't come. I've heard she's been searching everywhere for the Divine Awakening Nail. She's set aside all other deals and is wholeheartedly gathering intelligence on the Divine Awakening Nail. Has she taken the wrong medicine? The once most proactive Vice Pavilion Master now neglects trading to hunt for something she can't even use. She no longer acts like a proper merchant. The Pavilion Master of Fang Chen First Class Pavilion nodded slightly and said, "Then we won't wait for her. I've purchased 105th grade healing spirit pills from Alchemy Province. What do you all think is a fair price per pill?" Everyone share your opinions. The several Vice Pavilion Masters began to ponder. Whenever there was a rare commodity to corner, the Vice Pavilion Masters would discuss together and set a price that maximized profit. One Vice Pavilion Master tentatively suggested 5 low-grade crystal mines. Another immediately retorted, "Are you joking? A mere 500,000 spirit stones for a 5th-grade healing pill. At least one mid-grade crystal mine. One mid-grade crystal mine is too few, at least 2. 3 is more reasonable. 3 mines is 30 million spirit stones, that's about right. Any higher and it'd be beyond what a nascent soul cultivator can afford. Are you all running a charity? A pill this sought, after for just 3 mid-grade crystal mines, I say 5 mid-grade crystal mines. That's the price. Take it or leave it." The Vice Pavilion Masters rolled their eyes. Someone teased, when it comes to profiteering, it has to be you, Vice Pavilion Masterkin. As everyone knows, Vice Pavilion Masterkin's heart and liver were nurtured on soapy water. The Pavilion Master of Fang Chen First Class Pavilion chuckled softly and said, 5 mid-grade crystal mines is indeed a bit too black-hearted. 3 is more reasonable. Just then a petite and delicate figure in a pink dress burst in like a whirlwind. She asked in a coquettish voice, "Am I late?" The Pavilion Master laughed gently. "What price do you think would be good for a 5th-grade healing pill?" Hearing this, the Vice Pavilion Masters all smiled. One Vice Pavilion Master joked, "Pavilion Master, you're asking her. She'd sell it at cost price if she could." Another added, "Vice Pavilion Master Gu is the least merchant-like merchant among us." Gu Zina crossed her arms over her chest and thought seriously, muttering, "A 5th-grade healing pill? That's a rare treasure to corner. I heard that Fang Chen sold a single black radish to the old man from the fire worship sect for a high-grade crystal mine. If a 5th-grade pill sells for less than a black radish, won't he laugh me to death?" After deep consideration, Gu Zinner said very earnestly, "Pavilion Master, 5 high-grade crystal mines. A single spirit stone, less is a disrespect to the 5th-grade healing pill." Absolute silence filled the cabin. Even the Pavilion Master of Fang Chen First Class Pavilion froze, staring at Gu Zinner with astonishment. He thought to himself, where has that Vice Pavilion Master Gu, the one known as the sole fair merchant of Fang Chen First Class Pavilion, gone? Since when did she turn into a black-hearted profit monger? Gu Zinner blinked and asked, "What are 5 high-grade crystal mines too few? I think so too. Turns out I'm still too conscientious, utterly out of step with the profiteering culture of our Fang Chen First Class Pavilion." The Pavilion Master coughed heavily several times and hurriedly cut her off. "They say the waves behind drive on those before. I'm indeed the wave before, but you, Vice Pavilion Master Gu, are no wave behind. You're a tsunami." The Vice Pavilion Masters were also stunned for a long while, thinking, whose influence has Vice Pavilion Master Gu been under these days? How did she go from the only conscience of Fang Chen First Class Pavilion to losing her conscience entirely? Gu Zinner was completely oblivious to anything wrong with herself. Compared to that Fang Chen, who would swindle heaven and earth, she felt she had quite a lot of conscience left. Gu Zinner asked curiously, "Pavilion Master, how many 5th-grade pills did you get? Share some with me, and I'll go fleece Fang Chen." "That guy is loaded. If I weren't weaker, I would have slipped a sack over his head, dragged him into an alley, and stripped him clean ages ago." The Pavilion Master was tickled into laughter, shaking his head and joking, "Good thing you held back, or you'd probably have ended up being stripped clean by him instead." As he spoke, his expression turned serious, his gaze sweeping the room. He lowered his voice. "The intel I received, he unleashed a fearsome display of might in Tianyi City, Gixu Province. His battle record is terrifying." Then he added heavily, his tone full of gravity, "I only dared believe this news after cross-checking from many sources." "Oh?" The Vice Pavilion Masters present were immediately intrigued and pricked up their ears. Fang Chen's renown has long thundered across the Central Plains. To the powerhouses of taking great state, his name crashes like a bolt of lightning in their ears. Not long ago, he slew Venerable Xin Nai before the battle lines. Immediately after, at the North Sea, he furiously cut down the Tooth, Star Giant King, and crushed the envoy of young Emperor Mountain beneath his palm. These heaven-shaking, earth-shattering feats, just hearing of them, is enough to raise goosebumps all over one's body. Now, with fresh news of Fang Chen arriving, how could they not be curious? Gu Zinner perked up her little ears, her eyes sparkling as she looked over, and her crisp voice urged, "What divine might did he display? Isn't Heaven's remnant city the half-giant's territory?" Her little mouth fired questions like a string of firecrackers, her face brimming with excitement. Those fellows are not to be trifled with. Could it be that Fang Chen went and clashed with one of their Dharma aspect cultivators? The tower, Lord of Fang Chen's first-class pavilion, nodded slightly, his tone indifferent, a fight, something like that. Upon hearing this, the expressions on everyone's faces were utterly calm. In the past, hearing of a nascent soul cultivator shaking a spirit transformation cultivator would have earned at least some shock. But now, filled with Fang Chen's exploits, they felt him fighting a half-giant of the Dharma aspect was truly nothing out of the ordinary. They even secretly gave rise to a faint, inexplicable thought, is this even worth mentioning? Just as everyone's minds were relaxed, the Tower Lord's tone shifted abruptly, and he said, word by word, this time he killed more than half of the Dharma aspect cultivators in Even's remnant city. In that instant, the vast meeting hall seemed to be seized by an invisible giant hand, plunging into a terrible, deathly silence. Everyone was stunned. They exchanged glances, eyes silently asking if they had misheard. Gu Zinner looked dazed, her voice airy. Tower Lord, if I'm not misunderstanding, you mean Fang Chen killed 5 Dharma aspect half-giants? The Tower Lord nodded heavily, then dropped an even heavier sledgehammer, and right in front of the city, Lord of Heaven's remnant city, that 5-phase half-giant. The entire hall once again fell into dead silence, every pair of eyes bulging wide in an instant. By the way, the Tower Lord took a deep breath, as if suppressing a raging storm in his heart, and added gravely, it is said that the sage who protects Heaven's remnant city also appeared, but Fang Chen, right before him, forcibly crushed those souls into dust, leaving them no chance to seize a body and cultivate anew. The meeting hall was so silent that a falling pin could be heard. Everyone's breathing was crystal clear.